Part 5. My Sacred Journey. Sacred Life. If we honored the sacredness of life, we would not have 16,306 species of animals and plants threatened with extinction. If we honored the sacredness of life, we would not have a history of turning human against human, torturing and bombing each other, enslaving, raping, murdering, wiping out civilizations, polluting our air, water, land, and even our bodies. But this is not the tale of our history. This is the reality of our current behaviors. We cannot concede these atrocities as being inflicted by foreign invaders, by aliens, or by armies. These are the behaviors of individuals, people just like you and just like me. As individuals, each one of us has the capacity and the potential to be the protector of the spirit of each and every life. Not only by refusing to participate in outrageous atrocities, but by reshaping our roots so that we honor the sacredness of all that lives. As a species, as individuals, it is up to you, to me, to each one of us to remember and to teach future generations that life is sacred. I learned much from my parents and the world they lived with, and how they suffered from their experiences long after the war had ended. Although I did not learn from them how to live a sacred life, I did come to my own realization that life itself is sacred. My parents met in romantic Paris after the Second World War. They never told me their love story, but my sense is that their romance was subsumed by the immense stress of their experience. My mother, born in France, survived the war by being in hiding in Paris, while my father, born in Czechoslovakia, was taken along with his family to Auschwitz and emerged with his sisters, the only survivors. Not being able to get a work permit in France, my parents applied for visas in other parts of the world. They were admitted to Australia, where my two brothers were born Australian citizens. Later, my parents emigrated to England, where in 1960, I became the final addition to the family. Due to their childhood war experiences, my parents lacked formal education. They worked hard. My father as a factory worker, my mother selling French perfume and cosmetics in department stores. My parents survived with lifelong cases of PTSD, and as a child I was aware of my father's tormenting nightmares, feared his rages, and was deeply saddened by my mother's bouts of despair. I myself had such vivid nightmares of Nazis taking my parents away that during the day I hatched plans of escape. As a young girl, I was riddled with grief and desperation, and as a teenager, the only mentorship I had was to study hard and to be strong. I staggered into life, never having the opportunity to be taught the lessons my parents were themselves deprived of. I was my parents' daughter, as I recognized that I bore my father's pain and my mother's anguish. I understood that my emotional and psychological growth had been stunted. Even though they tried their best to shelter their children from what had happened to them, it was as if their life experiences were mine. I myself was lost, or had never really truly existed to begin with. My parents loved my siblings and me deeply, but their experiences had left them in survival mode, and they parented in the only way they knew how, shaming us and raging at us in an effort to control and to shape us. They expected their children to be strong, to be fighters, and couldn't bear to see signs of fear or vulnerability. Any signs of tears, sadness, fear, or vulnerability marked us as weak and sensitive. Responses that did not have a place in a world they had grown up in. To ensure our survival, we became hardened, unable to breathe through the thick walls of our defenses. This pressure cooker life became part of my very fabric. And although I left home when I was 16, I continued to prove that I was a fighter by applying this pressure to myself. The dysfunction and the sickness of humanity that had created the atrocities of a Holocaust had also created dysfunctions in my parents and in myself. Even though I understood, I was also horrified to witness my parents' emergence from their experience with an unequivocal xenophobia for Germans and Arabs and any nation that stood by. Later in life, as a therapist and a self-defense instructor, I witnessed a similar cycle in my students and clients. Fears, anger, and other reactions were often universalized and passed from one generation to the next. Held in the system of both perpetrator and victim, and completely disrupting the potential for growth. I vowed to break the cycle, to clear myself of a legacy that had disrupted, distorted, and completely overwhelmed my true nature. I was exposed to a world that stood by, that continues to stand by, and I vowed not to. As a witness to each of the members of my family coping and surviving in whatever way they could, I vowed to take a hand in shaping myself, and discovered that with work and dedication, I could move forward as if born anew. In the process of doing this work for myself, it became clear to me that with guidance anyone could achieve the same results. It also became clear that we as a species must be committed to doing the work, to the dual path, which is both personal and global growth. The rare and treasured moments when my father had a special glint in his eye as he told us stories of his mischievous youth. My mother's laughter and the way she loved to dance, and their fierce love for their children revealed the potency of a spirit they would have had if their spirits had not been crushed so long ago. It is this potency of spirit, the undying seed at the core of every one of us, which even after the most dire experiences shone for me like a beacon, and has guided me to my own sacred path and to the awakening of my own spirit. A spirit awakened. I in my life have changed so drastically that I find myself surrounded by people who believe I must have been blessed with my current disposition. They often believe that I am fundamentally different, stronger, calmer, and more focused than they. However, the power of my story, the truth of it, is that although the details of my personal story may be different, I am no different than most everyone else. I did not grow up in an enlightened family, learning compassion, yoga, and meditation. On the contrary, for many years I was blinded by pain, bitterness, and anger, the energetic matrix I inherited from my parents. As we age, most of us measure life by what has been lost, and this could easily have been my own measurement. With an awakening of the spirit, Rather than a life marked by loss, its path is one of presence, filled with renewed vitality. It's a beautiful thing to choose to blossom, to grow, to transmute from the difficulties and heaviness we carry with us into a lightness of being and a fullness of heart. This is the spirit awakened. My life has led me to a spirit awakened, a journey that lays the foundation for this book. Your life has led you to the convergence of our paths and to your own personal vortex to awaken and liberate your spirit. May you honor the forces within and around you. May you live with meaning and joy. May you be true to the sacred within. The Sacred Bodywork Certification Program and workshops in the sacred practices are available at the Dual Path Institute in Marblehead, Massachusetts. Our programs are also available in your location, around the country and the globe. Please contact us to book a class or speaking engagement.